The Indiana Fever just got exposed in the most brutal way possible. Without Caitlin Clark on the court, this team looked completely lost against Washington. We're talking about an 83-77 disaster that showed exactly how much this franchise depends on one player. Sydney Colson couldn't handle the pressure, scoring just 4 points while turning the ball over 3 times. The offense scored 0 fast break points. 0. This wasn't just a loss. It was a complete system failure that has Fever fans questioning everything about this team's future, including some calling for Coach Stephanie White to get fired. Picture this. You're watching the Fever's first possession without Clark, and Sydney Colson immediately turns the ball over. That's exactly how this nightmare started. Colson was supposed to be the answer at point guard, stepping into Clark's massive shoes for at least 2 weeks while the superstar recovers from her injury. Everyone expected her to at least keep the ship float. Instead of rising to the occasion, Colson delivered one of the most painful performances you'll see from a starting point guard. We're talking about a complete meltdown on the biggest stage. 4 points on 2 for 7 shooting tells only part of the story. The real damage came from her 3 turnovers and 5 fouls in 31 minutes of playing time. This wasn't just struggling. This was falling apart when the team needed leadership most. Aaliyah Boston played less minutes than Sydney Colson. Aaliyah Boston played less minutes than Sydney Colson. Aaliyah Boston, MVP, had up to this point, all W country Aaliyah Boston played less minutes than full-time comedian, part-time basketball player Sydney Colson. Fans were literally calling for her to be pulled from the game as early as the second quarter. Social media exploded with brutal criticism. One fan perfectly captured the mood when they said, "I wanted to tell Sydney Colson to leave the basketball before the basketball leaves her, but it's too late. The basketball has already left her." That's how bad things got out there. Sid Colson is the worst point guard I have ever seen in the WNBA. And I've watched Julie Van Loo play bad games. And if you guys have ever seen heard about or watched Julie Van Loo in a bad game, it can get like painful to watch. The offense looked completely lost every time Colson tried to run a play. Teammates were standing around waiting for something to happen. Anything to happen. The ball movement that usually flows through the Fever offense just disappeared. Players couldn't get into their spots because the point guard couldn't get them the ball where they needed it. Compare this to Clark's usual 19 points and almost 10 assists per game, and you start to understand the massive gap the Fever are dealing with. Clark doesn't just score, she makes everyone around her better. She creates easy shots for her teammates. Colson couldn't do any of that against Washington. Sydney Colson, definitely not a backup point guard for this team. Now, the Indiana Fever, with Caitlin Clark, against the Atlanta Dream, scored 12 points in a quarter. The Indiana Fever, with Caitlin Clark, scored 13 points in a quarter. The Indiana Fever, without Caitlin Clark, have back-to-back quarters scoring 17 points in one and 13 points in another. Social media exploded with Fever fans questioning why Stephanie White didn't have a better backup plan ready. They knew Clark's injury was coming. They had time to prepare. Yet this was the best option they could come up with. Fans were absolutely furious about the lack of preparation. Colson's struggles exposed the harsh reality that the Fever have 0 depth at the most important position on the court. When your starting point guard goes down, you need someone who can at least run basic plays. Someone who won't turn the ball over 3 times in crucial moments. The Fever clearly don't have that person. This performance raised serious questions about whether the team can survive even 1 game without their superstar, let alone 2 weeks. If this is what the Fever look like without Clark, the next couple of weeks are going to be absolutely brutal for this franchise. Here's a number that will make your stomach drop. 0 fast break points for the entire game. That's right. 0. The Fever's offense usually runs through Clark's incredible court vision and pace-pushing abilities. She creates those easy transition buckets that keep teams competitive. Without her, the team managed just 77 points while shooting a season-low 23.8% from three-point range. They had 0 fast break points. 0 fast break points on the game. 0. 0 fast break points. I don't care what this score ends up. The ball movement completely disappeared. The Fever only managed 15 assists compared to their usual 22 per game average. That's a massive drop-off that shows just how much this offense relies on Clark to make things happen. When your primary playmaker goes down, everything else falls apart. Players couldn't find each other. Open shots became contested ones. Easy baskets turned into forced attempts. Kelsey Mitchell should have stepped up as the primary scorer. Instead, she went 4 for 16 from the field for just 14 points. Mitchell is supposed to be the second option on this team. She's supposed to take over when Clark is out, but she couldn't get good looks. She couldn't create her own shot consistently. The offense just wasn't designed to run through her the way it runs through Clark. Aaliyah Boston shot the ball 5 times. Aaliyah shot it 5 times. Sid Colson shot the ball 7 times. She shot it 7 times. Like, even Aaliyah Boston, usually reliable in the paint, managed only 10 points despite shooting efficiently. She barely got any touches as no one passed to her the entire game. Boston shot 4 out of 5 from the field, but only took 5 shots total. Think about that. Your most efficient player gets the fewest opportunities because nobody can get her the ball where she needs it. The offense became a series of isolation plays and forced shots. That's exactly what happens when you lose your primary playmaker. Players start trying to do too much on their own. They hold the ball too long. They take difficult shots instead of moving the ball around. The entire system breaks down. Washington's defense didn't even have to work that hard. They just sat back and watched the Fever beat themselves. The Mystics could play straightforward defense because they knew the Fever couldn't run their usual sets. No fast breaks to worry about. No crisp ball movement to defend. Just isolation basketball that's easy to stop. This wasn't just missing Clark's scoring. This was losing the entire offensive system that made the Fever competitive. The Fever dropped from 107.5 points per 100 possessions with Clark on the floor to just 87.7 without her. That's a massive difference that shows how much one player can impact an entire team's offensive identity. They looked like they picked teams before coming to the game and they just went out there and tried to play the best they can. If I can even say the best they can. I didn't really see any fire from anybody. I didn't really see any energy from anybody. Yeah, Lighty Hole had a couple plays where she does the Lighty Hole thing. But I'm tired of seeing the supposed leader of this team, the head coach, on the sidelines like this with her arms crossed the whole entire time, not looking like she gives a damn. I'm not cool with that, folks. The 77 points scored represented everything wrong with this team's construction and their complete dependence on one player. When your offense can't function without one person, you don't have a team. You have a one-woman show with supporting actors who can't perform when the star isn't there. Fever fans are absolutely furious with Stephanie White, and honestly, can you blame them after watching this disaster unfold? White had time to prepare for life without Clark. Everyone knew this injury was coming. The team had practice time. They had meetings. They could have worked on new offensive sets. They could have prepared backup plans. Stephanie White is getting destroyed today. Kian Swear posted this a picture of what's supposed to be Christie's side. Instead of adjusting the offensive system or finding creative solutions, she just plugged Colson in and hoped for the best. That's not coaching. That's just throwing bodies on the court and praying something works. Good coaches create systems that can function when key players go down. White clearly didn't do that preparation work. The rotations made no sense during this game. Key players sat during crucial stretches while struggling players stayed on the court way too long. Sophie Cunningham played 20 minutes and scored just 2 points. 2 points in 20 minutes of game time. Yet White kept running the same ineffective lineups over and over again. She watched Cunningham struggle and did nothing to change it. Fans were screaming for adjustments that never came. One fan perfectly captured the frustration saying, "I feel bad, but please get Sydney Colson out the game." Everyone could see the problems happening in real time. Everyone except the coaching staff apparently. White kept trotting out lineups that clearly weren't working against Washington's defense. Post-game, White's comments about the offense looking different felt like excuses rather than taking responsibility for the preparation. She talked about missing Clark's presence but didn't explain why the team looked so unprepared. She didn't talk about what adjustments they tried. She didn't take ownership of the poor rotations or timeout usage. I'm sorry, there is no way You can have 0 fast break points a team unless you are actively trying to not run. Unless you are trying to not run. You cannot have 0 fast break points as a team. Someone has said it, no defense, no offense, no fight. Outside of Lexi Hull and Aaliyah, or not even, I can't even blame Aaliyah Boston, she didn't touch the ball. Fans pointed out that good coaches find ways to maximize their available talent. They don't just throw their hands up when the star player gets injured. Look at other successful coaches around the league. They create systems where multiple players can step up. They have contingency plans ready to go. On a side note, by the way, 14,000 seats, 3,000 people didn't show up last night. 3,000 people didn't show up during a game that would have been sold out. Sold out by the way, at elevated ticket prices. The timeout usage was questionable throughout the entire game. White failed to stop momentum when Washington went on their decisive runs. She let the Mystics build leads without calling timeouts to regroup her team. Basic coaching decisions that could have changed the flow of the game. Some fans are already making comparisons to former coach Christy Sides. One source noted that Stephanie White literally says what the fans want to hear, and is going back to exactly what she did in Connecticut. That's not what this franchise needs right now. White's inability to have this team ready for Clark's absence has fans questioning if she's the right coach for this franchise. This loss wasn't just about missing talent. It was about a complete failure in coaching preparation and in-game adjustments, the most painful part. Washington came into this game on a 3-game losing streak and still dominated the Fever. Think about that for a second. The Mystics were struggling. They needed a win badly. They saw Indiana without Clark and knew this was their chance to get back on track. And they absolutely took advantage of it. It's awful. This is awful. Like Kelsey Mitchell, Miss went 2 of 7 threes. She was 4 of 16. She couldn't get an easy shot. She couldn't get an easy shot. Natasha Harrow went 5 of 10 on really tough shots. Like, Natasha Howard went 5 of 10, and every single shot she took was a tough shot. And I have to give Natasha Howard credit, because she made some tough shots. She made some tough shots. But nothing else went well for this team. Brittany Sykes and Kiki Iriofin combined for 37 points and 17 rebounds, completely outplaying their Fever counterparts. Sykes dropped 21 points and grabbed 9 rebounds, while Iriofin added 16 points and 8 rebounds. These two players stepped up when their team needed them most. Meanwhile, the Fever's supposed stars couldn't match that energy or production. The Mystics outscored Indiana 25-17 in the second quarter alone, taking control when the Fever should have been fighting hardest. That quarter showed everything wrong with this Fever team right now. They couldn't respond to Washington's run. They couldn't make adjustments. They just watched the game slip away during those crucial 12 minutes. Even Washington's rookies got in on the action. Sonia Citron scored 13 points, while Iriofin added 16. Young players stepping up and contributing meaningful minutes. That's what depth looks like. That's what good teams do when they need production from different sources. This loss revealed that without Clark, the Fever is not a championship contender. The league is getting stronger every year. Teams are adding talent. The competition is fierce. You can't just rely on one player to carry you through an entire season. The next 2 weeks will determine whether this franchise has any hope of competing or if they're just the Caitlin Clark show. These games coming up are going to test everything about this organization. Can the coaching staff make adjustments? Can the other players step up? Can they find ways to win ugly games? Other players need to step up immediately, or fans might be looking at a lost season and serious questions about the team's future. Kelsey Mitchell needs to be more aggressive. Aaliyah Boston needs to demand the ball in the post. Someone has to fill the leadership void that Clark leaves behind when she's not on the court. I'll say it. Fire Stephanie White. Oh boy. The Fever have talent on this roster. But talent means nothing if you can't put it together when your best player goes down. Washington showed them exactly what happens when teams come prepared and execute their game plan. The next 2 weeks will show us what this franchise is really made of. Issa was in it. This was embarrassing. This was embarrassing. And how much grace are we going to give to a coach because the coach says, we're working things out for the rest of the season. We're trying to figure out our identity. Do you want to know who your identity is? You shouldn't need to figure out your identity. You have Caitlin effing Clark on your team. You spent the whole time saying Caitlin Clark injured will help us find our identity. You have Caitlin Clark on your team. Do you want to know what you should try to do? Do you want to know what you should try to do? And I understand you cannot play Caitlin Clark ball without Caitlin Clark. At least run. Put in some effort. Run. Don't try to grind the team down and win a game in the 70s. Because when Caitlin Clark comes back, you're not going to be able to do that. You have fed this whole season talking about needing to figure out the team's identity when you are coaching Caitlin Clark. You are coaching Caitlin Clark. This wasn't just a loss. It was a wake-up call that the Indiana Fever are nowhere near ready to compete without Caitlin Clark. Sydney Colson's 4-point disaster and the team's 0 fast break points showed exactly how much this franchise depends on one player. Stephanie White's coaching decisions left fans questioning everything about this team's preparation and future. The next 2 weeks will either forge this team into something stronger or expose them as a one-player franchise. Clark's return is tentatively set for June 10th against Atlanta. Share your thoughts on whether Stephanie White can turn this around. And let's hope Clark comes back stronger than ever.